Ancient Apocalypse, a new series presented by Graham Hancock, is a comprehensive picture of the early human civilization that may have existed prior to the end of the last ice age. The 8-episode docuseries explores the journey of Hancock and the record of his travels across the globe to discover this advanced ancient civilization. Hancock is a well-known British journalist and author of 12 books. Most of his work has explored how ancient cultures like Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Mesoamerica connect with an old, unknown civilization. However, Hancock's works have been criticized by scientists and historians alike. Nevertheless, Hancock's works have had a lasting impact on the public, and his investigative research of ancient civilizations spans over 3 decades. The new Netflix series debuted November 11, 2022, with all 8 episodes available and narrated by Hancock himself. In Episode 1, the focus is on Gunung Padang, Indonesia. Hancock believes the presumably natural hill at Gunung Padang is actually a man-made pyramid. He posits there are 3 underground chambers within the hill, and mainstream archaeologists are refusing to investigate. He presents the fact that local researchers have determined the site dates to 9600 BCE. He also claims Gunung Padang's architects sailed to Micronesia to build its stone structures. Episode 2 takes us to Cholula, Mexico. Hancock asserts that an ancient lost civilization built the Great Pyramid of Cholula. Hancock relates the native story about the pyramid being the work of giants who survived the flood and criticizes archaeologists for dismissing it as myth. In this episode, Hancock argues that Malta's great ruins are undatable and that there is no evidence of a learning curve regarding the construction of its megalithic temples. He highlights a legend that a giant built the temples and asserts that the giant may have been someone of intellectual genius, which is a theme in the Nephilim stories of Enochian literature, where the giants inherit the forbidden knowledge of the Watchers. The 4th installment in this series travels to the Bimini Road, back to a time when this part of the Bahamas was above water. Hancock argues that this structure is man-made and not a natural occurrence. He points out that the Bimini Road overlooks a deep-water channel that once ran between the Ice Age Bahama Island and North America, a channel through which the Gulf Stream flows, making it a hugely important landmark for any ships heading northward out of the Gulf of Mexico toward the Atlantic. He posits that the stone slabs could have been part of some larger monument or place marker, and that it could be the legacy of a seafaring culture that witnessed the rising waters at the end of the last ice age. In Episode 5, the viewer is transported to the nearly 12,000-year-old site of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Hancock asserts Göbekli Tepe is the location of a transfer of ancient knowledge, and cites Mesopotamian deluge accounts. Quote, "It speaks of a small band of wise ancients, the Apkallu, who taught the people here the skills of civilization. In the beginning, humanity was created by the gods to be stewards of the land and animals. But the first humans were too lazy and too unruly to do the job, and their numbers grew unchecked. So the gods sent a great deluge to wipe the slate clean and start humanity over again. And they also sent 7 sages, the Apkallu, traditionally depicted as bearded figures in flowing robes, to instruct the survivors. Their leader was Oannes, said to have come from the sea and usually depicted as a half-man, half-fish. He walked among the people teaching agriculture, architecture, and knowledge of the stars. Oannes is yet another example of a civilizing hero, a teacher who suddenly arrives, usually by sea, after a time of great cataclysm, like Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, or like Osiris, who legend says traveled by boat to teach humanity the ways of civilization. And it's not just their stories that are similar across ancient cultures. Their depictions in ancient art are remarkably similar too, down to their robes and distinctive handbags." End quote. Episode 6 travels to America to a place called Poverty Point in northeastern Louisiana. It's an immense man-made earthen structure, today known simply as Mound A. Hancock explains that Poverty Point is one of the largest and most complex ancient sites in North America, and its oldest sections date back to 3,700 years ago. Hancock explains that he is not claiming that Poverty Point was created by the lost advanced civilization he's looking for, but that he's interested in the origins of the sophisticated astronomy and geometry that were deployed here. In Episode 7, Hancock returns to Turkey to explore Derinkuyu, an ancient underground city and survival bunker that could shelter thousands in times of crisis. Mainstream academia believes it was constructed for defense around the 8th century BCE, but Hancock believes it's not a defensive structure and was built much earlier. He asserts that, quote, "the answer might lie in one of the region's very oldest myths, one that dates back thousands of years to the Zoroastrians. The ancient Persian prophet Zoroaster founded what's claimed by some to be the world's oldest continuously practiced religion. Its sacred texts refer to an underground city just like Derinkuyu, telling us exactly why it was made and by whom. Zoroaster spoke of the first king and founder of civilization, a man named Yima. One day, as Yima was beside a river, the great god Ahura Mazda appeared to him with an ominous warning, not of a flood, but of a fatal winter. And he told Yima to build a vara, an immense underground structure. Into it he must bring the best of men and women and animals, 2 of every kind. Yima must store seeds of every tree and fruit, creating an inexhaustible supply until the fatal winter had passed. Oh, and the sacred texts also tell us that the onset of this fatal winter would be heralded by a serpent in the sky. The supposedly mythical vara sounds a lot like the underground cities we find here in Cappadocia, but mainstream historians refuse to see the connection." End quote. The final episode of the series has the viewer back in North America, in part of eastern Washington state known as Channeled Scablands. Mainstream geologists believe the area formed as a result of repeated floods, but Hancock's guest, Randall Carlson, believes the geological evidence here speaks not to centuries of gradual floods, but to a single massively violent deluge that lasted just a few weeks. Hancock argues the Scablands show all the signs of a massive, devastating flood of very short duration, much like the ones described in myths around the world. Here he posits that the events he has referenced in the entire series coincide with the end of the Younger Dryas period, which he believes may have been caused by a storm of comet fragments. Hancock then offers up his closing statement, quote, "So it's not hard to imagine that an earlier advanced civilization might have been wiped out, erased from memory during this ancient apocalypse 12,800 years ago. After those cosmic impacts on the ice caps, sea levels rose, swallowing up all the low-lying coastal lands that would have likely been settled by an advanced culture. They traversed the seas, passing down their geographic knowledge to others, their appearances recorded in ancient traditions, even etched in stone. They directed less advanced cultures to memorialize what happened with huge monuments incorporating specific, datable alignments, and megalithic memorials recording those dates buried as time capsules. And these ancients helped reboot humanity in a scarred and devastated landscape." End quote. Of course, for those viewers who are well-versed in the ancient astronaut hypothesis, Hancock's lost ancient civilization is obviously the Anunnaki. He simply cannot bring himself to that conclusion. Those of you who have been regular viewers of the archive over the past few years may already know that when it comes to Graham Hancock, we have what you might call mixed feelings. Our main problem with him has been his criticism and dismissal of Sitchin's work. On the other hand, the archive follows Hancock's investigations into various megaliths because they are often the same locations, which are the subject matter of our presentations. Regarding Hancock's newest series, the archive actually felt compelled to offer a defense regardless of any personal reservations because of the transparent and blatant hit pieces that have surfaced almost immediately after its debut. Mainstream academia has long had its battles with Hancock. Its discrediting of Hancock and his research is not unlike the process applied to Sitchin's work, which we believe is rather ironic. However, this time around, some of the reviews were nastier and more disingenuous than usual. These so-called critics are showing their true colors like never before. The hack job presented on the website ReadySteadyCut.com, which was authored by Nicole Ackman, illustrates the standard blueprint of discrediting a subject matter or point of view that does not comport with the established academic paradigm regarding our historical timeline. Quote, "The British journalist and pseudo-archaeologist has a strong disdain for professionals in the field that he has worked in over the past 30 years, even publishing 12 books. Once you hear his theories about ancient history, it becomes clear why." End quote. The piece starts out by describing Hancock as a pseudo-archaeologist, which is the same old, tired trope that lazy writers use when they cannot engage in a logical argument. Again, this tactic is nothing new, but in this case it is also completely ignoring the fact that Hancock has said repeatedly over the years, and at the beginning of the series, that he is no archaeologist. And to point out such a thing would cause the writer to enter a self-made paradox. So, of course, the author omitted that tidbit. Now, a mainstream article that rebukes Hancock is nothing out of the ordinary, and certainly would not rise to the level of the archive stepping in to say something about it. But this particular article went over the top by making an accusation that was completely outlandish and disgusting. And it's not the first time this tactic has been employed against Hancock and many others who question the current academic historical paradigm. Here's the quote. "Fingerprints of the Gods," Hancock's most successful book, essentially promotes an idea that actually began with 19th century racist colonizers. The idea that one, presumably white race was responsible for all the world's great ancient civilizations undermines the abilities of non-Europeans and has links to white supremacy. In fact, one wonders why Netflix would give a man like Hancock a platform for his anti-intellectual, pseudo-scientific ideas. The archive has heard this accusation many times regarding the ancient astronaut hypothesis as well. So we find common ground with Hancock when it comes to refuting such an ignorant and misinformed perception. First of all, anyone that has even slightly studied Hancock's ideas know he is no racist, and his ideas do not support any particular race as being our predecessors from a lost ancient civilization. Second, the charge of racism is the last-ditch effort utilized by lazy commentators and writers who can only view the world through a tiny lens which does not require any measurable mental effort on their part. Without a shred of evidence nor any context whatsoever, the writer of this article shows more about her true colors in one paragraph than she could explain in an entire book. Although we could continue to pick apart this entire article, the archive will expend no more time on this hack who blindly takes marching orders from mainstream academia without shame. And as for Hancock, maybe one day he will connect the remaining dots.